Welcome to the Period Besties podcast with Stasha and Katie. Think about it as chatting with your best friends about all the TMI stuff you've never talked about before with two period coaches who've been helping hormones collectively for over 20 years now. I'm Stasha.
And I'm Katie, and we're pulling back the curtain on what it's like in the world of menstrual coaching. From puberty to menopause and everything in between, we're here to show you how period coaching can save the day. We'll share practical tips and information you can put to immediate use to improve your hormones and happiness.
We're removing the mystery, ending the taboo, and shining a light on just how powerful period coaching can be.
So whether you need period coaching or are considering becoming a period coach yourself, these episodes are going to help you. We'll share stories, coach live on air, and bring smart, savvy guests to share their wisdom too. Let's start today's episode.
Welcome to the Period Besties podcast. Today we get to do a fun round of live coaching with somebody I got to meet when I was in Australia on a speaking tour. Actually, about this time last year. So I'm so excited. She has become just an absolute love, and we've gotten to interact in various fun things online in the last year. And I am so honored that she decided to jump into our coaching seat with us today. So I'm going to kick it off as I generally do and just ask you to give us a little introduction, tell us who you are, what you do, a little bit about yourself, and then we'll dive in.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Sasha, and thank you for this opportunity, guys. So my name is Eva Rado. I am in Australia, in Melbourne, and I run my own business. I work from home. I'm a mum with two teenage girls, and the work I do is that I work with mums that are entrepreneurs one-on-one, coaching them to turn the household management into a household responsibility so that they don't have to carry the weight of everything that being mum normally leads us to have to do. We're breaking the preconditioned societal gender biases that have us having to do it all for everyone all of the time. And my reason for doing that is that I really want mums who run their own business to be able to get back to their desk and concentrate on growing their business with single-minded focus and not being pulled in the million directions that being mum generally has them being pulled in.
Love it. Totally love your business, your vision. It's been so fun to just watch it blossom and bloom over this last year as well. And really, it's an important thing. So I'm just thrilled to be able to be here and help support you so that you can go help support all these moms who need you.
Hey. Yeah, thank you.
So tell us, what is your goal here chatting with us today? What can we help you with?
So I'm in my early 50s, or just turned 50 last year, and heading into that sort of perimenopause phase. And I've got two teenage girls who are now ovulating and basically settled into their own cycles. And like many women our age, I didn't know anything about charting, cycles, energies, any of that until bit more than 12 months ago, like 18 months ago maybe, when I came across Stasha, your work, through some other contacts and some other things that I was hearing and reading. And I'm intrigued by it. I'm loving what I've been learning about it, but what I found really difficult is going from the world as I knew it and what I had learned and what I've spent my whole menstrual life doing and knowing, and transitioning into this new world of charting and how to really get that, to understand it, to have the habit of it, and then also how to teach my children that, given that it's all so new to me. So I suppose that's really what I was keen to talk to you about where to start, how to start, what's important, what to leave out for the meantime, all of that.
I love that. And so many of my friends have teenage daughters as well who they're learning how to ovulate and chart and track all these things, and then they're also going through perimenopause. Like, it's a very interesting place to be, like very different hormonal changes, but very similar in the sense of irregular periods and moods and sleep and things being disrupted. So even though it's opposite ends, right? One is starting the journey and we're slowly going through that transition. So many things are similar in that journey as well, which I think is really interesting and fascinating as a woman.
Yeah, 100%. And having my children at the age that I did, I kind of knew we would be doing this at the same time. In fact, I warned my husband when we had the second daughter, like, now you're in for it. But having now come into this world, and I personally am loving this whole, like, suddenly the world makes sense. My whole life trying to work by this, male 24-hour cycle and never getting businesses really off the ground, or never really being fully able to be present in any job I had, to now working this way is brilliant. But I still struggle with what to chart, how much to chart, how to teach them what to chart. It seems more complicated than probably it needs to be, because I haven't had, it would be great if I had come across this 10 years ago, and I had the habit and the practice, and I understood it so much more that I could support them as well. But this is where I am. So what do I do?
Yeah. So I want to preface this for the listeners that I know you are using the charting mandala that I have created. And so we're talking about charting things, not just your basal body temperature and cervical mucus, which is what we would traditionally be charting, but we're also charting things like the moon phase, our moods, our energy, our digestion, there's a section on there for consuming, which generally means diet, but some people like to switch it to other things, especially if they're struggling with disordered eating issues, stuff like that. So we're talking about a lot more than necessarily a just typical tracker, which in my experience is how you go forth in life with confidence, because you understand what's coming next. You know how you're going to feel next. You know what kind of moods are coming up. And you then can go, oh gosh, I remember seeing this mood on my chart last month. That probably means I'm getting my period soon, or those kinds of things. So in general, when we're talking about charting, I almost always just say start with a couple of things. So for you might be doing some different data than, say, the girls, because what you need to track is probably not necessarily the same thing that they need to track across the board. So a lot of it will be the same, but I think some of the things may be a little bit different. On that chart that we have, one of the sections is for your cervix, which is important if you're trying to get pregnant or trying not to get pregnant. But generally, when you're in a long-term committed relationship, you probably have some other ways of avoiding pregnancy, and you're not worried about using tracking in order to do that. And it also gets a little tricky in perimenopause to track to avoid pregnancy when things start to get really erratic. It can get a little daunting, to say the least. So a lot of times people will just fall back to using a barrier method, or he'll get the snip or something to that effect to just make it a permanent, we're done here situation. Whereas for like the teens, that might be uncomfortable for them. They might not be into doing something like that. It just might be like, oh God, mom, gross. Which is, part of the journey. So that might be something that you want to substitute for something else, meditation, movement, stuff like that. So in general, when we're tracking, those are kind of the things that we want to look at. Now, you mentioned on your form that sleep was a thing.
Oh, yeah.
More about that.
So, yeah, sleep is a thing. I, I, I don't even know where to start. It's such a big thing. So for me, sleep. I've never traditionally been a good sleeper. Like when I was younger, I didn't need much sleep. I burnt candle at both ends. I was a very A-type go person. After having children, that changed a fair bit. Obviously, the sleep deprivation kicked in and really knocked me about, and obviously of course, the hormonal changes of pregnancy and childbirth and child rearing and all of that as well. I'd say it really hit me for the first time how much sleep I needed a couple of years ago when I found myself in burnout, and I was just if it wasn't an absolute have to, I just had to be horizontal, but I wasn't sleeping well. So I would, struggle to get to sleep, be very restless during my sleep, wake up very exhausted. Like I felt like would have been better if I hadn't slept almost, like that exhausted. And then during the day, I couldn't stay upright for a whole day. I'd have to lie down on the couch or have to lie down in bed. And one of the things that I instigated to come out of that burnout was the first thing I instigated was that I need more sleep. I need better sleep routine. And I rearranged the household so that I could be in bed at, 9:30 each night or whatever it was, some nights 8:30. And slowly that got better. And then the last few months, as I've really started to struggle with some of the perimenopause symptoms, sleep's become a real issue again. But in a different way. So I know it's all tied together, but emotionally I'm not great. So I end up sitting up and watching junk TV because I need the release after a whole day, which sometimes is 11 o'clock and sometimes it's 1 a.m. and the other day it was 4 a.m. because once I'm going, I can't, it's like, and even on the nights when I do get to bed for a decent hour to get a decent amount of sleep, I don't sleep through the night anymore. So, and there seems to be a number of different things that will wake me. Obviously, movement in the house, people in the house, somebody needs me, somebody gets up and goes to the toilet, I hear it, I wake up. That disturbs my sleep more than it used to. So once, like I used to be able to hear that and go back to sleep. Now I hear that and I'm lying there staring at the ceiling for 40 minutes, right? I also, the temperature changes, the suddenly being completely so hot that my skin can't breathe. And months ago I was having hot night sweats. That stopped, but I still get that hot, that overall, it's suddenly in a sauna kind of heat. And I strip off and throw everything off, and then 30 seconds later I'm still hot, but I'm shivering. So I put everything back on. And then again, I'm awake for an hour just lying there, feeling like it's a waste of time, And so that's basically that's my sleep experience, and that's not necessarily every night. There can be a week where I sleep great, and then I think, okay, it's done, it's over, and then it starts again, and I have these nights, and whether it's my body that's woken me or whether it's something else that's woken me, that really is infuriating, and it makes all the other stuff. We all know sleep makes everything else more difficult, but to me it feels like it's the worst of the perimenopausal symptoms because it exacerbates all of the others. I don't sleep, so I don't eat well because I don't feel well, and so then I put on weight, and I'm perimenopausal, so I can't lose weight as easily because my metabolism isn't the same, because it's just this cycle that starts with sleep, and I just it's hard work.
I feel your pain. So first of all, when it comes to charting, you mentioned two things that I think are really key for you to make sure that you're charting right now, and that is sleep and mood.
Yep.
On that mandala, there's a little heart with a dot under it by the date, which is typically we would say track sleep. And so how I do it is I color in like the top of the heart if I struggle going to sleep, the middle if I wake up in the night, or the dot if I wake up too early and just am up. So that I can kind of see if it was, beginning of the night, middle of the night, or early mornings. My partner gets up at 5 a.m. for work 5 days a week. And there are just some days where that's not enough sleep, but I can't get back to sleep. So that's sort of what triggered that section for me. And, of course, adjust things as needed. And like I said, you might even want to do something like using the cervex symbol, the star for sleep. If something there makes more sense to you, of course, it's yours. You can adapt it and use it however you're needed. Some people post-menopausal use the basal body temperature area, but since you're still in perimenopause, I would say keep tracking basal body temperature. You want to confirm ovulation. That's a big thing in perimenopause, because that's going to be like, okay, I know I'm going to get my period. It's a great flag of like, I'm definitely going to be getting my period now because I clearly ovulated. So that can be really helpful for that. So I would say keep that, but you might want to move it over post-menopausal and start tracking sleep in there, which I know some people like to do. So as far as charting, I would definitely make sure you're charting sleep and mood on there, as well as basal body temperature, which just I say to everyone, whether you want to get pregnant or not, because ovulation is so important and you want to confirm it, which unfortunately cervical mucus doesn't necessarily confirm ovulation. It just means you're trying. Doesn't necessarily mean it happened. And in perimenopause, you may see where you have a long cycle and you may see that cervical mucus happen 2-3 times before you actually ovulate, before you actually get your period. So having that basal body temperature can be really helpful in that case. As far as the sleep thing is concerned, one of the things that I have used with clients previously that seemed really effective, and I'm going to let Katie go on a magnesium rant, but I'm going to say, because I know she's going to, but I'm going to say rhodiola is a supplement that is really helpful in perimenopause. And it can help with a lot of things like hot flashes, cognitive ability, those kinds of things. Mood, memory. I'm trying to remember there was a study done on it. It was pretty amazing. The things that it showed really was helpful for it. You have to take it in the morning, which seems kind of a little counterintuitive, but you take it in the morning and it is helpful for sleep. And in fact, I even had one of my friends taking it who was nowhere near perimenopause, but just struggled with insomnia. And she said it really helped her with insomnia. So I'm going to just throw that one out there right out of the gate as something to help with some sleep relief, because you're right. Everything, sleep it just trickles downstream, domino affects everything.
I was going to ask too, do you notice any sort of pattern with the charting of stress, or doing a week before you go to bed, like say 9:30, so then the following week your sleep's better? Is there any sort of pattern with, because you mentioned you get like one really good week of sleep, is it where you are in your cycle? What's kind of the pattern, or is that something we want to start paying more attention to as well, that pattern of it?
We definitely need to start paying more attention to it. Having said that, life is pretty stressful at the moment anyway, and there are a lot of different factors that are impacting my cortisol levels, my stress, my ability to work. I think part of why I wanted to chat to you guys is that's part of what I find difficult, because I've started this charting process. And I get that the concept is that I be able to plan and see what's coming, I'm finding that part really difficult, given that my cycle is so irregular and so all over the place. My stresses are so all over the place. All of this stuff. I almost feel like there's no pattern to see. And part of that, I kind of feel too that's because I don't have the experience. And then I'm like, I question myself, how long do I actually do this before I see a pattern? And that's why I kind of feel like if it was 10 years ago, I would know the patterns. I would know and I would notice these differences, and it would make more sense. Whereas I'm really struggling with starting this process at this time and using the information effectively, because that's I think. Sorry?
How long are you between cycles?
So it just depends.
Yeah, I know, of course.
I can be, it's very erratic. So I can be 22 days, I can be 90 days, I can then be 70 days, then I can be 68 days, then I can be 80 days, then I can be 30 days. It's really all over the place.
I would be charting with the moon, by the way. So anyone listening who's in the same boat, day 1, new moon.
Yeah.
And then just charting, instead of charting period to period, charting new moon to new moon, because it'll be easier to recognize the patterns in that smaller, consistent baseline.
Right.
And you may find that sleep thing is tied to moon phase. And I know this isn't true for everyone, but for a lot of clients, they will say, even with great regular periods, will say, new full moon comes around and I just don't sleep well. No matter what I do, full moon, I just don't sleep well. New moon, sleep like a log. Could be, tearing it up on the town, come home, sleep like a baby during the new moon. So it's an interesting pattern to see. You might see it kind of aligning with the moon phases. You might not. Obviously stress and life and all those things make a huge impact. But I would be interested to see, charting with the moon phases, if there wasn't a little something tied in together there.
And on that note, you could do some seed cycling with the moon phases as well, which could help a lot with, we're not balancing in perimenopause, but supporting the hormonal changes in perimenopause. Like seed cycling per the moon cycle is a great way to do that. And with the sleep, what I would really suggest is having some sort of night routine that some nights, maybe it's 5 minutes, some nights it's a little bit longer. I find myself, if I have a really stressful day, I carve out a longer routine at night, which includes like a hot shower. It includes journaling and meditation, where I know it's going to take me a longer time to unwind. And then even if it still takes me a while to fall asleep, I feel that it helps me not wake up by having that routine of just really unwinding, because I'm letting the cortisol unwind more. And I guess I'll toss in the magnesium here. I love magnesium. I think we talk about magnesium every time we have any sort of discussion, but when we're stressed out, our bodies deplete magnesium, and it's anti-stress mineral. And there's so many different ways that you can get magnesium in, like seed cycling is a great way. Those seeds, getting more avocados, dark leafy greens, or some sort of supplement, whether that's a lotion or a powder or a capsule. Having magnesium can be very helpful. And there's different types of magnesium. So you could even have a magnesium that you take in the morning that doesn't make you sleepy, that just kind of helps keep that cortisol feeling a little bit better. And then in the evening, maybe taking more like of a magnesium citrate, for example, to kind of help with the sleep. But I can't say enough about magnesium. It's one of the best minerals out there. It's my favorite mineral, and most of us are not getting enough. And it's not just us. Like most of the population is not getting enough. And on that note too, I'm not sure if you've gone to the doctors recently, but checking your vitamin D levels. Like if your vitamin D is really low, it also affects sleep too. And even if we live in a place that's really sunny, most of us are not outside. And if we are, we've got long sleeves on, we have hats, we have sunscreen on, like we're not getting that vitamin D, but that can directly impact sleep as well. So those are some things to kind of focus on. Vitamin D, you might need to take some supplementation there depending on your levels. All of us will benefit from magnesium no matter where you are hormonally in your hormonal like life transition. And then that night routine, because I struggled with insomnia for years and years, and it always comes back to like getting into that routine and turning off the Netflix or the Hulu, whatever I'm watching, reading. I read romance novels before I go to bed. That helps me like switch my brain from like stressful work children to a nice fluffy love story that helps me fall asleep. It might not work for everybody, but whatever it is that can just change your brain waves, I find has been really, really helpful too.
Yeah, there was an article that came out recently that magnesium was one of the most effective supplements you can take in perimenopause for sleep. Like it was rated the most effective sleep helping perimenopausal supplement. So yeah, that's a good one. And if you find yourself waking up from noise, it could be time to invest in a pair of ear plugs. Is that the word I'm looking for? Yeah.
I wear them.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah, especially when I travel, I take them with me. A sleep mask and earplugs. And you still hear in them. I know moms are like, but I need to be able to hear my kids. Like you can. But the little noises like the bathroom flushing, that gets filtered out. So it's like you can still hear if your kids need you, but it filters out those lower level things that might be waking you up while still being able to hear the important stuff happening.
Yeah. And, cool room too. Like 68 degrees. I do not know what that conversion is. I think it's probably somewhere around 28, 27 maybe.
Less. It'll be less. It'll be
like less. Okay. But like cool room. A lot of my clients, I'm like, okay, turn a fan on. What is it?
It's 20 degrees Celsius.
20 degrees. Okay.
I have my room set to 55 at night, Fahrenheit.
5. Wow.
Yeah,
okay.
Which is 12.7 Celsius, just for the international audience. But yeah, I have it set to 55. Now we don't have air, we don't use the air conditioning. But like in the winter, our house stays nice and cold. And so I have to turn the heat on to get it up to 55. Yeah, I like a cold room at night.
Yeah. I also love my weighted blanket. That helps me a lot with sleep too. Another herb that I was going to mention too is valerian root. I have been using that. It can help with hot flashes and like that feeling of heat, but it also helps with sleep too. And for anybody listening, talk to your doctor first before taking any supplements, any herbs, but there are different things that you can add in. So I just have like a nightly fun little party. I take my magnesium, take my valerian root, I take some CBD. That also helps me. I take that during the day too, especially in my deep luteal right before my period comes. I'm taking it to kind of help counteract some of the strong reactions I might be having. But yeah, there's different things. And I feel like all of these things after a while, the more that I've been doing it, the more that I've like been getting like quality sleep.
And all of this, I would bring the girls in too. Like get them doing a magnesium supplement with you, get them seed cycling with you, because seed cycling and through puberty is also really helpful for making it an easier transition, an easier, gets you more cyclical, regular, all that fiber. And it's, your husband can join along for the ride too. Like it's still good, it's still good for you, right? It's still fiber, it's still minerals and vitamins that are in those seeds. So it's still just good for you in general. And like, as a culture setter in your house, you can just like spike everyone's food.
This is where I get start to get confused, because I have dabbled in seed cycling, but I had that whole confusion of, hormonal cycle, moon cycle, my what I need, what they need, where they're at, and there is some there is some truth to the fact that we live together, and so our hormones kind of come in line, and we somewhat, but not enough to kind of go, right, this is your day one, and this is my day one, and this is your day one. So that's the bit where I struggle with things like seed cycling as an example, because what's the best way for each of us individually, and how do I manage that, even in terms of just having the right seeds in the house?
Yeah. Well, for the most part, you're just doing two mixes, right? Your day one to ovulation,
yes.
Ovulation to your period. So you're going to go from new moon to full moon to new moon. You and hubby can be on the same cycle plan. And then the girls can be on whatever plan they are, but you're generally so you're in Australia, where Mel is, who has a seed cycle.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So I ordered from her, and I got more than I used in a month, for sure. So for me, it was really easy. I just kept those containers on the counter. So it would be as simple as going let's all make our meal, and then popping a couple scoops on yours, a couple scoops on, and then wherever they are, a couple scoops on theirs. So you basically always have both going for everyone at the same time. And you can just pop them on, on salads or soups or pastas or whatever you're eating for that meal. And then, everyone can just sort of pop wherever, they may not be at the same place of their cycles as well. As time goes on, they'll not be synced together, and, they'll sync together, and then they won't, and then they will, and then they won't. It's just, how that goes. So, and they'll sync with the moon, and then they won't, and then they will, and then they won't. So
I think you could Google, or you could go to one of our websites and print off a graphic and put it on the fridge too, of the cycle, where it would say, what the phase is. So, the first phase, the follicular phase, we would do the pumpkin seeds, the flax seeds, and that's also the new moon to the full moon. And then the second phase, we've got the sunflower and the sesame, which is the full moon to the new moon. So I feel like I have everything on my fridge. I'm a very visual person, but I think that could be really helpful, because if all three of you are charting, and then you also have that information, and then you could even just have the seeds, you could even stick a chart on the seeds on mason jars. That's what I did. I used to make my own seeds. I would just put on there, Googled an image, I cut it out, I put it on that container, and I put the other one on the other container before I started buying my seeds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I did. I put them on the containers. So the two containers just were part, follicular, ovulation, menstrual. It made sense to me. So it was just on the containers, and then the containers just lived on the counter. So where we typically put the plates for us to make our own plates, we just stuck them there. So it was really easy to just pop them on.
Yeah.
It is definitely a helpful thing. And when you're talking about trying to deal with stress and making your life easier, it's just an easy way to help get into that cyclical feeling and vibe. And as you're transitioning, you're basically moving from the internal menstrual cycle to the external moon cycle. So you want to have some kind of anchor there. And I find seed cycling is a really nice way of anchoring in that you're still in a monthly cycle. It's just sort of switching from one to the other. And I've always said that the menstrual cycle is just training wheels for being a wise woman, where you don't have the very obvious bleed every month, but you still have that moon cycle every month. And traditionally, we would have been so much more in tune with the moon phases, right? celebrated them, we lived with them, we planted with them, we harvested with them, we did everything with the moons back in the day. So it's really just kind of going back to your roots, if anything.
And that is what I love about this. It's like this whole community, this whole, way of living and of being as a female. Like, yeah, that's, that part even feels very grounding. Like it's like a return to what's supposed to be.
Yeah. I mean, it could be part of the evening routine. Like you and the girls just sit down and chart together, get off screens, like everyone, we're cutting the screens off now. We're going to chart. We're going to do a little, journaling on our own or whatever. And, go into our own individual spaces to read a book or do whatever. And, take our magnesium and take our evening things and just bring everything down a notch. We switched the lights over in the house to red bulbs. So we go from white light to red in the evening. So it's like just one of the things where I'm like, we're done now. And I just switch the lights. It's a little remote control and just the lights get switched over to red. It's like we're all going on the cortisol decline together as a group. And we're going to just relax. And we, because he's getting up so early, it's earlier for all of us. Like I'm getting up, waking up as well. So I was like, it's just easier to join. So the lights get switched over to the red lights earlier in the evening for in the house. We have them in the living room and the bedroom both. So it's time to chill out. And I even noticed like it worked for my cat and now our dog, who like as soon as I switch the lights over starts to chill out. So it's like everyone in the house vibe just chills.
I love that. I was going to say something similar in the sense that I think it's a beautiful practice to do with your daughters and to do it together. And to also like show them like getting off screens and how that helps with sleep and how this can be a really good habit, because so many of us are like sleeping with our phones and looking at our screens. And that I think is one of the biggest things affecting most of our sleep is just the scroll of it is causing our brain to not shut down and to go into this like kind of anxiety driven pattern, because that's what the scrolling mechanism does with our brain. But what a beautiful practice of like, okay, we're all going to sit, we're all going to chart, we're all going to like talk about our day and how we felt. And do I feel in half the heart? Like what are we all filling in? And that's a good way to really communicate in a different way, which I think is really important with teenagers too. That would have been awesome to do.
So just on a practical, basal body temperature, you do first thing in the morning, right? So then, like, that means you're charting, like just looking at it practically, like I've got to record that straight away.
No.
But then you're saying like,
no, you don't. I mean, there's most people do it one of two ways. They either have a thermometer and it's digital, so it remembers what your last temperature is. So you can just do it in the morning. So like when you're doing it that way, and the days that you sleep, you still have to get up at the same time to take your temperature, but then you can just roll over and go back to sleep. Like I used to just fall back asleep with the thermometer in my mouth, like just roll over, go right back to sleep. It would beep and I would just toss it. I'd have to go find it in the bed later during the day to record. Or a wearable. So like temp drop is what I use now.
Yeah.
And it just syncs. And in fact, generally, I just sync my temp drop to the phone like every couple of days. So I go in and I do a basal body temperature, just catch up on my chart. And in fact, this last week, I just kept forgetting to bring my phone out when I was charting. So like I was, 7 days behind on the basal body temperature. But then I went back in and I just filled it all in because it was all on the app, the temp drop app. So I just went back and filled it in. So you don't have to record it immediately. You just have to have either a temperature thermometer that remembers your last recording, or you do an app. Daisy records it like Bluetooth. The temp drop thing records it with Bluetooth. Any of those kind of app collaborative basal body temperatures. We'll just record it and then you can just go in and pop it in whenever.
Yeah.
But
I would say,
I was gonna say,
say
starting first thing in the morning works great. Like whatever works. You know, some people like to do it at their lunch break. Some people like to do that first thing in the morning. Like whatever works. That's the most important bit. It working for you is the part that matters. So it just because it's, you know, a lot of us do it in the evening as the wind down routine doesn't mean that that works for everybody. So
yeah, find what works and is the easiest for you. I would say like try to keep it simple, like what Stasha you mentioned at the beginning. Like right now, just track those 3 things and really do that and have that become kind of that routine. And then maybe you add one more thing on in a few months. But really simplify it as much as you possibly can. Because I find when trying something new and adding something new in, the more that it's easy, the more that I enjoy doing it, the more that I will continue to do it versus trying to like do all of it at the same time. And I'm sure the same is for your daughters too. It's like, okay, let's all just track 3 things. Let's get really good at that. Let's add some things on. And then if the 3 of you are going to be doing it, maybe not always together, but then you can also, that will be a good way to remind like, oh, hey mom, have you charted this week? They can ask you that too. It's a good, I always like when people remind me to do things.
accountability buddies.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a friend, well, and you know Meredith. Her daughter loves to color. Meredith hates to color. So her daughter actually colors both of their charts for them.
I love that. I can actually imagine that, knowing Meredith.
Yeah. So her daughter's like, I got it, mom. And they do it together, but Meredith doesn't actually do the coloring bit.
Whatever works.
Exactly. That's what I said. I was like, great, done. It's still done. You're still getting the data. You're still tracking. You're still seeing what's going on. You're still, you know, she's on that perimenopause cusp as well. So she needs to be paying attention to seeing that, just as all of us here are in different stages of perimenopause. So all of us here need to be tracking this stuff too.
Yeah.
Any other questions, Katie?
I was going to ask you if there was anything else going on that you wanted to chat about with the perimenopause journey. I know there's lots of changes here. So anything else besides kind of the sleep that you have questions for us about or would like to share?
Wow.
Big question.
Yeah, it is. It is. And it's like, it I suppose I mean, for me, I've also got an issue with my knee, my leg. I've got a lot of pain. So I'm taking a lot of pain medication. I'm managing that, which is also impacting everything. And for me, it's been really difficult to work out what is it that I can control, what's happening to my body that I can do something about, what is it that I just kind of have to be, okay, that's what my body's doing today. And I think that's why the charting was like, I was really keen to get it right and to be able to do it. But it was bigger than Ben-Hur, and I didn't even know, like, so I think I don't know that I've got any other questions for you really, Katie, but what I suppose from this conversation, like, just to know, like, to chart to the moon from now is probably for me being the key, because that transition in the learning of what charting is and how it's going to make a difference that's what's been the most difficult to work out, what and when and how much, and you know, and even from the perspective, Stasha, I know you've got the 2 different mandalas, like, and I started with like the one that's what is it, like 40 days, like the longer one, and I'd still fall off the chart, like, and I was like, okay, so like, what's the point now? Like, you know, kind of
That's exactly mental it. I always tell people, when you fall off the 40-day chart, it's time to move over to just doing moon to moon. Yeah. So my question is going to be then, what are the things that you are going to start with for the charting?
So I'm going to start definitely with those 3 things. I think you're right. and I've dropped off doing the BBT. I just, it was too hard. Like, and it didn't, but from two perspectives from our conversation is also, like you're saying, for me, it is really important to have that indicator. But I think it's really important as a starting point for any person learning to chart earlier on. And so from a role modeling perspective, it's important for me that I start with that so that I embed that. And I love that idea of how you use the heart and the circle at the bottom for your sleep indicators. Yeah. So, and I mean, mood is, always, like I'm always taking that, I've taken note of my whole life. Like, I've always had in some kind of journaling, some kind of chat, my calendar, anything. I've always had like a thing where I just put some kind of symbol or something. Yeah.
So what colors are you going to use?
Oh, I love that.
No, I know you like color, but this is something that I feel like if we make that decision now, it will be easier to do instead of sitting there going, oh gosh, I don't know what to do and I'm overwhelmed. So what colors do you want to use?
No, you're right.
Sleep symbol. Let's start there. What colors?
Sleep is blue for me. Sleep is blue.
Perfect.
Yeah. Sleep is blue. And mood, I don't even know, it's been so long, but I was using, yellow, pink and orange, I think I was using for the different, no, it wasn't, because they're too happy colors. There are too many happy colors. There was something, I think it was purple, pink and yellow. So pink when I'm really high and happy and bubbly, purple when it's a bit kind of, I'm a bit flatter, and yellow was that in between kind of, yeah.
Perfect. I will say that typically when people do the mood flower, there's 6 petals because technically we have like the 6 major emotions. So it's like anger, sad, fear. I do anxiety, happy, whatever. If you have a color that just represents the things that you find to be the most. Right. So you were saying that you were finding that your moods were getting erratic because the sleep was getting erratic. And so what are those moods that show up when you have a bad night of sleep? And make sure there's a color for that. Right. So like I have a color for anxiety.
Yeah.
I have a color for happy, a color for sad, a color for introverted, and a color for extroverted. Because I find that really corresponds with both my cycle and the moon phases, whether I feel introverted or extroverted. And so I found it really interesting to see that ebb and flow throughout the month. And I find that it really also helps me to realize if I'm a bit out of balance, because I'll be like, I won't get the little bit of extroverted boost that I typically get in late follicular through ovulation and into early luteal. And so I can see like if that's not happening, I will go, oh boy, I maybe need to prepare for a more of a rocky, deep luteal this month and start doing the things now. So I found that was really helpful for me as well. So you might want to throw in, what does it feel like? How do your moods change when you have a bad night of sleep? Irritated is a color that I have for mine, which I don't use often, but I do use occasionally throughout the year.
As a mother of teenagers, that would be very used a lot. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, no, I really like that idea. Actually, that makes a lot more sense too. Yes. So that's the first thing I'm going to do is go and pick those colours and and key them somewhere on the key chart, and then start. Yeah.
And like,
don't exactly
forget that you can change your mind. Like if you're using a color and you're just like, this is like, I keep having to go back and look this up because it's just not registering for me. Like maybe that's not the color for that thing, and maybe it's time to cross it off and try something else. Like the key is there. So when you look back, you can always look at that key and see what changed, what ebbed, And then as you get into a routine, it won't, but you can always note it. So you can always look back and see what changed.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point too, that I can change it and I can keep the key for that chart. Because that's been part of, like, that's still, it's all part of that, like, part of my, how do I see a pattern if I don't decide? There's a perfectionist in me, right? It's got to be right so that I can get the information I need out of it. But, you're right. It doesn't need to be right. It just needs to work.
I mean, it'll change. Like, a decade later, it's going to be different. You're going to have different symptoms, different, moods, different sleep patterns, different, just things change. So especially for like the girls, what they track, the symptoms that they track will vary wildly over the different decades. So like I have the charting mandala in book form, so I can just go back and look at the years and then I have the sheet attached to it. But I know other people would staple a year together and then staple their key to it. So each year would have their key and it would all be stapled together so that each year they could just look back, and then over the years they could look back and it would all be together.
That sounds fantastic.
I would say, because you mentioned perfectionist, right? Just having flexibility. I liked what you said, Stasha. I didn't add my temperature for a week and then I went back and I did it, So if you're having a really, really busy day and it just feels like it's too much that day, like you can do it the next day too. Like having flexibility with it, having a day that it's going to add stress to it. It's probably a day of unwinding and taking a hot shower, or like doing an Epsom salt bath or foot soak or something else that's going to be really beneficial instead of like taking that time to chart, and you'll probably remember how you felt the next day. At least I usually do. I'm like, oh, yes, yesterday was a little much.
Yeah, I am definitely a type A perfectionist. I'm right there with you. And charting has taught me to let things go more than anything else, probably. I've been doing it for over a decade now. And there's just sometimes a week goes by and you're like, oh boy, crap, I need to sit down and try and remember. And you just sit down, you remember what you can, and you just let the rest go. But it's better than going, oh, well, I forgot, so I have to just wait until my next period and start over. Like that's the killer of habit and routine. Just keep filling what you remember, fill in what you can, and then just keep moving forward. That's the better option.
That's a good lesson to teach your daughters as well.
Yeah,
my mom still is a perfectionist, and I'm, unlearning some things daily. So it's nice to see that modeled.
Yes.
That flexibility. Yeah.
Yes. It's one of the things I do in my work, and it's one of the things I've changed in my house, but it's not like it's very good externally. It's still the internal that I'm working on, but yes.
Of course.
This is probably what I need to do to work on that as the next level.
And we all are. We're all practicing unraveling that. We all grew up kind of similar, 80s and 90s. It's like so ingrained in everything that we do. So being really, really kind to yourself and everyone else listening, just be really kind to yourself.
All right. Any questions or clarification that you need on your homework to go with?
No, I love the idea that what you said about the flower with the different petals and the different colors, because I also had a whole thing about I felt different in the morning to how I felt in the afternoon, and so then I have to remember which side of the flower is from which part of the day, and where do I start, and where do I and this makes a lot more sense and is a lot easier. So I just fill in what there is and leave what there isn't, and that's it. I love it.
We overthink things. I think we all do it. It's just like, oftentimes when I find myself going, oh, this is just too much, I go, am I overthinking this? This is probably way easier than I'm making it out to be. So I get it.
I heard this lady speak a few months ago, and she's had a difficult few years, and someone asked, like, well, what's your next step in your business? Like, what do you want to do? She's like, honestly, I just want to have an easy life. Like, I know life is hard. I'm not going to make it harder anymore. Like, I'm going to wake up every day and just say life is easy, even when things are hard. And I was like, that's a really interesting, good spin. And I like that. Because you're going to have, it's going to be hard, but the more that we make it hard, the harder it's going to be. But that's just how our brains are wired. So it's just letting us know every day, like, today's going to be easy, even when there's hard things that I have to do. So I really like that. I appreciated that piece of advice.
Me too. I like that. I'm going to take that.
Thank you so much for being here and being so open and sharing. And will you please come back and share with us and all of our listeners in a few months how things are going?
Absolutely. I'd love to. Yeah, definitely.
So I think that'd be really interesting to kind of share the charting for a few months and doing more of the moon cycle and how that is helping and supporting you and your daughters. Like, I'm super interested as well to see how they're doing.
Yeah, thank you. I'd love that. Yes, absolutely.
Yay.
I love it. Amazing. All right. Well, then I guess we can wrap it up there. So thank you so much for being a part of this and for chiming in and being bold and brave and sharing. And to anyone who's listening, if you want to get into the heart seat, as I would rather call it than the hot seat, or the womb seat, let us know. We're happy to have chats. So if you're interested in jumping in and getting some coaching yourself, let us know. Slide into our DMs or shoot us an email and let us know you're interested. And to everyone else, thank you so much for listening. We'll see you in the next episode. Bye for now. A big shout out and thank you to our sponsors for today's episode, Period Coaching School and Katie Bressack Wellness.
Thanks to you, our favorite bestie, for listening to the Period Besties podcast, where no topic is TMI. And of course, share this episode with your besties.
Remember to leave us a 5-star review, nothing less than the best for us besties, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.
You can follow us on Instagram at Stasha Washburn and at Katie Bressack, or email us at periodbestiespodcast@gmail.com.
Check out more about us at katiebressack.com and periodcoachingschool.com. And of course, check the show notes for free goodies and extras that support this episode.
We'll see you on the next episode.
Bye for now, besties.